Here we go.
Well, hello there, you amazing, beautiful, wonderful people. Guess what? That's it, it's Friday. We made it through the week. We made it, only just. We've got some battle scars, bomb damage, but we made it. And today we are talking about the Idaho 4 case, because over the last sort of couple of weeks or so, there's been some things sort of moving around the case. We've obviously seen Bryan Kohberger being moved from Moscow, Idaho to, Ada County, where the trial will go ahead. For those of you who don't know, I am looking to attend that trial. There is a way in the pinned comment that you can contribute towards that if you want to. Please do not, whatever you do, feel that it is necessary. It's just for people who wish to, and that's all I can say on it. Obviously, I know that's got mixed reception. Also, remember that the trial's not for a while, so we've got some time. It's not something you've got to run out and do immediately. But yeah, I want to go. I want to go because I've been around this trial and this situation, this crime for close to 2 years, invested a massive amount of time in it, and I would like to go there. I want to go there for numerous reasons. One, to be someone who is going there with an open mind and not just with a lit torch and pitchfork and screaming for the death of the accused before he's been given his his attempt at going through the system fairly, hopefully. But look, some other details came out, and I touched on these the other day. And look, this GoFundMe situation around the Gonsalves, I get it. Some people have got a specific mentality that, they absolutely should be setting up this GoFundMe. And I get why some people feel that way. And I've always sort of tried to be fair. And I just feel that it was a bit out of place to ask for something that you could do without the need of it. It wasn't a necessity to do it. It was, and they made it. It certainly wasn't a necessity. And they even had commented in the GoFundMe, which was subsequently removed, basically, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is the be all and end all. Why shouldn't we if we can? Well, just because you can do something, it doesn't mean that you should do something. Don't put something out there requesting money for something that is being offered to you for free. That was my problem, but we'll let that rest. Because in amongst all this, we had statements from Brooke, the person who had set this up, which is Jack DeCure's auntie, and she sort of had made some comments specifically about the injuries sustained by Kaylee Gonsalves. Now, if you missed it, because I'm not going to go over it in this video because it's quite graphic, but I will leave a link in the description and the pinned comment to the video that I did the other day that will explain it more. But it got me thinking, right? Because obviously Bryan Kohberger is the person who's been accused of this, and so far, it's been kind of alluded to the fact that there was no stalking. There was no evidence of stalking. So if you want Bryan Kohberger to be the person who did the crime, if you remove any stalking element out of the situation, how do you then input him into a situation unless it's completely random that would then make sense? And that only leaves you with certain, options, and one being completely random, which I feel that's not the case. I don't think that if someone was doing this completely randomly, then we would have seen the outcome that we saw. I would say that we perhaps wouldn't have seen that house being the house that was targeted, considering the amount of vehicles outside and the amount of people who were likely to or could have been in that house. It could be argued that if it was random, they may not have known how many people could have been in that house. But equally, when you look at the property, it's a student house. It was on a football night when Davis University was over and they were playing the Idaho Vandals. So it was a football night. It would have been, if anything, it would have been a night that could have potentially garnered the most interest in that house in terms of after parties, drinkers, and lots of people being in there. But what we seem to get from the crime is it was quite systematic in the way that it sort of went down. Very strategic. The person who entered there seemingly knew where they were going and what they were doing, unless some of the elements that have been pushed upon us aren't quite accurate. like, did the people who survived this massacre, did they really not hear anything? Because if you listen to what Brooke says about the injuries sustained by Kaylee Gonsalves, and we're going to talk about another element of that as well, then it would kind of suggest that this was a real brutal situation that would have potentially caused noise. And how do we know that? Because apparently the people who survived, like Dylan Mortensen, for instance, she didn't hear the crime itself, but she seemingly heard people whispering and quietly sobbing, but didn't hear the hugely brutal attack that took place just above her head. At one point, I believe that some of the noises were put down to perhaps playing about with Murphy the dog. But look, this led me off into another area of kind of thinking in this case as well, because with the stalking thing has been sort of simmering away in the pot of conspiracies for a while. And off the back end of that, it was kind of ascertained by the guilters that Madison Mogan was always the target in this. She was the target. It was a stalking situation, and it just kind of escalated from there. But what kind of throws a spanner in the works with that is the fact that Kaylee Gonsalves seemingly sustained the injuries she did. Because the way that that's explained, there is, and we've touched on this in the past, we've touched upon the fact that even the method of murder in this case reeks of personal. It doesn't reek of speed, because someone could have gone in there with a weapon and done this a lot quicker. We're supposed to believe that this crime happened in a real short period of time, real quick, in, out. And again, when you think of someone going in, out quickly in this kind of situation, this is why you kind of can't completely discount the other BK in all this potentially being connected to it, because he would have potentially been the person around this situation who had the skill. And it would be fair to say around the situation, but what I mean is he's no more around the situation than what Brian Kohberger is. They both resided in Washington, not Moscow, Idaho. So even if Brian Kohberger was the person who did it, he ventured from Washington across to Moscow, Idaho. So how can you say that this person would have been okay to do it and willing to do it, but the other BK wouldn't have been willing to do it? Do you know what I mean? It's an odd one. But no, we also know that there is, and I'll get to the point in a second, a lot of people have pointed out there's been a huge drug bust in this area. It's been going on for a while. We know that this area has an issue with narcotics. I'm completely aware of it. There was, the Magic Valley bust. Many fentanyl pills, 7,000. It's massive. It's massive. And there's some people who have gone down. Is there any relevance here? And I think to myself, look, Brian Kohberger may or may not have done this crime, but what seems to be the common thread that runs through it all is narcotics. It seems that every single person around this case has some kind of connection to narcotics or something else, either murder or death or gangs or something. So there are common themes that run through everybody. And you then have to consider, even Brian Kohberger, there is connections, there is a connection to the narcotic world. So if we're saying that this isn't to do with stalking, and you kind of rule out random, what is left? What are you left with? Are you left with a retribution killing? Are you left with... There isn't much left. But they are going to have to show that Brian Kohberger did this crime. And I find that there's elements to this, such as Steve Gonsalves saying that there's going to be things that are gross, that I then contemplate and think, well, what is this gross? Because I don't think at this point he was talking about injuries. I think he was talking about elements of potentially people's nature or people, what they were doing, that some would perceive as gross. And again, that just seems like the common thread yet again is this narcotics connection, this narcotics thread. However, what we also know And if we strip everything right back, we know that Kaylee Gonsalves was somebody who was interested in what we do, sticking her nose in people's business when it probably ain't wanted. Do you know what I mean? She was a true crime nut, if you like. She was interested in it. And there's been stories of things that she has got involved in, that she has kind of tried to investigate herself and look into. Would that be fair to say? So when you pair the fact that this night where this crime happened, it seemed to be quite a risky night. It isn't a night that you would rarely feel was the best night to do this. Again, the aforementioned football match for a start. This house was not likely to be quiet on this night. It was likely to be the most busy, and we know that this house could throw a party. Also, you have to consider what would have been the catalyst for this happening on this specific night, and you're left with the fight over at the frat house, which I've considered. But there is problems with that. There are problems. There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of cogs that would have to kind of fall into place, and people would have to be held in line by something in order to not speak about it whatsoever. And I don't know whether the frat house and the frat boys and the partying and all this and the fraternity, the Greek wall of silence, is enough to completely shut everyone down. But then it could be argued there's only really two people that would need to be shut down. But then you think, well, is that the case though? If this was a fight and a subsequent murder off the back end of a fight that happened in that place, are we saying that absolutely nobody would have said anything whatsoever? It's possible, but is it plausible? But Kaylee Gonsalves being like a crime buff and sticking her nose in to things, is it beyond the realms of possibility that Kaylee Gonsalves was in fact the target in all this, and she stuck her nose into something that was enough to get her and those around her killed? And is the fact that when Steve Gonsalves says that the injuries don't match, and it was almost like he was trying to give hints while not giving hints, and the police at the earlier stage are saying they don't know whether the house was targeted or the people within the house was targeted, but they believed that it was kind of isolated to this specific house. But then you're ruling out stalking and anything like that. So why was that house being targeted? Why was it specifically that house? Why was it specifically those people inside that house if you're removing the element of stalking? Because randomness at that point would have meant that if this was completely random, then there was still a risk. And don't get me wrong, it could be stated that perhaps the police automatically goes down that route to calm the situation down, which again, that is more than plausible that that would happen. But then you have to consider the alternative, and is it that was something going on around that house and around the people in there that got them killed? And again, is the aforementioned injuries sustained by Kaylee Gonsalves indicative of her being the intended victim initially, and was the rest just an escalation of things? You know, again, you've got to think Kaylee and Maddie not necessarily would have been thought to have been in the same room, but they are in the same room. So you've then got Madison, who then becomes collateral to Kaylee. The flip side of that coin is you then have a situation when Steve Gonsalves says they didn't have to go upstairs, but could it be argued that they didn't have to go downstairs and head to another room? And again, you take randomness out of the situation here, because if this was random, then why go past specific doors and go specifically to this room? And I can only ascertain that that was potentially done because they heard what was going on and had come out, or something along those lines. But we may learn more. And again, this at the moment is just me speculating. This is not fact. Nothing has been proven to be fact. But as these little things come out, you can't help but think about certain things around this case. If it's not stalking, what is Brian Kohberger's connection to it all? And how will they connect him to this crime? Who was the intended victim, or was it simply the house was the target? And again, if that's the case, then why? There is a connection somewhere. Why is it? Let me know down below what you think. I'll see you all in the next one.